it's not the individual steps that are the problem. It is the whole process and making sure that it's continuing to move forward.
Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Financial Advisor Technician Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Van Duzen, a financial planning nerd here at Kitces.com. On this podcast, I'll be speaking with some of the sharpest minds in financial planning to discuss a broad range of technical topics, from retirement and tax planning to estate planning, investment planning, client communication, and more. As your host, my goal is to both help you better understand the particular topic of each episode and to identify how you might apply it in your own practice, all in a weekly 30-minute episode. To kick things off, the topic of today's episode is the Section 530A Trump account, a newly available account that helps children get a head start on retirement saving. Notably, not only does this account type come with its own unique rules and potential planning strategies, but it also has its own account opening process that is very different than that of other investment accounts. And with these accounts being much talked about in the news, many financial advisors are likely to get questions from clients about how these accounts work, whether they're the best option for their goals, and what they need to do to open one. To help us dig deeper into this topic, I'm joined today by my colleague Ben Henry-Moreland, a senior financial planning nerd here at Kitces.com, to discuss the ins and outs of Trump accounts, as well as his experience actually opening these accounts for his two children, which offered lessons that advisors can apply with their own clients. So welcome, Ben, and thanks for joining us here on the Financial Advisor Technician Podcast.
Hello, Adam. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So to start, perhaps you could provide a quick rundown of just what Trump accounts actually are and how they work.
Yeah. So what I would call in a nutshell a Trump account, you see different names for a Trump account or 530A account based on the section of the code they're in. I kind of just call them TAs sometimes, Trump account TA, whatever you want to call them though. They are in a nutshell essentially is a starter retirement account for children. So you think of a standard individual retirement account, IRA, those usually need earned income to contribute. Someone needs to actually be working at a job and earning income to be able to contribute to an IRA. So generally, those are not available for children unless they're old enough, 13, 14, 15 years old to start working and contribute to an IRA of their own. So under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, the OBA last year, these were created as a new special type of IRA, essentially, that have these rules governing what happens during when an individual is a child, a minor child before the age of 18, where they can contribute to these accounts or have money contributed on their behalf by parents, grandparents, etc. And at the same time, they cannot withdraw any money up until they hit the year that they turn age 18. So essentially, you've got this dividing point here at the point where someone hits the year that they turn age 18, January 1st of their sort of age 18 year. Before that, you have these special rules where people can make contributions. They can contribute up to $5,000 a year. Up to $2,500 of that can be coming from an employer. There are some very specific rules around who can apply or who can contribute how much money. But in a nutshell, contributions can be made up until age 18. And after that, once they hit that age 18 year, then it essentially becomes an IRA. It just more or less turns into a standard traditional IRA. This money is in there. There's a combination of pre-tax and after-tax money, and it gets treated as an IRA going forward. So it's really essentially just a retirement account that can be contributed to when someone is still a minor child.
Great. Thanks so much for that rundown. Now, in terms of the types of clients who might be interested in opening one of these, now I know one group might be those who recently or very soon to have young children because they understand that there's a bonus contribution from the government that can come in. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. There's what they're calling a pilot contribution. The federal government really wants to get these accounts off the ground. So they're offering this pilot contribution of $1,000 that they'll contribute to these Trump accounts on behalf of children born between 2025 and 2028. So anyone who opens these accounts and has children born in these years, they can elect to get this $1,000 pilot contribution from the government.
Great. So yeah, perhaps a good note for advisors out there if they're having any clients with who are just having children, along with a congratulations onesie, perhaps a gentle reminder that they might be interested in opening up one of the accounts to at least get the $1,000 bonus there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Great. And so, in terms of the spectrum of savings opportunities for children, where do sort of the Trump accounts sit? You have custodial accounts, UTMAs, UGMAs, 529s. Where do you place Trump accounts amongst that group?
Well, this sort of fits in a fairly unique space. If you think of how people generally give money to their children, they tend to do it in one of maybe two or three ways. You think of, after they go beyond just childhood, where they're getting allowances and tooth fairy money and the like, they're either starting to get money for education. So parents, certainly love to save to 529 plans and other types of savings to, get their kids an education, be able to afford college, graduate school, et cetera. And then you get some more, more flexible giving that also occurs, where people might put money into an UTMA, UGMA account. Maybe they put it into an irrevocable trust where the kid can't access it until maybe a certain age or certain life events happen. But you don't see money being given to kids for specifically retirement purposes very often. And that is actually kind of the role that these TAs fulfill here, is because they really are a retirement account. You think of how they turn into a traditional IRA after the beneficiary hits their age 18 year. All the IRA rules then apply, which means that distributions from the account prior to age 59 and a half, those come with a 10% penalty unless there's a specific exception. Educational expenses, first-time home buyer expenses, some very specific exceptions to this 10% penalty. But basically, these funds are more or less walled off and earmarked by this 10% penalty until this person who is a child today hits their retirement age. So they have a decades-long horizon that you're talking about for these TAs. And so this really fits in a very different space from just educational expenses, from just lifestyle giving for children to have and enjoy sometime during their adulthood. This is even farther down the line to, okay, we're going to start your actual retirement savings now. So maybe a different conversation, different type of conversation for clients to have with, or for advisors to have with their clients, is what will these funds be used for? What do you want to contribute to your children? What stage of life do you want to contribute towards? Because, if it's college, if it's more in the beginning of setting someone up for having a career, having a, vocation that sets them up well to be able to be fulfilled and earn money that they'll be able to save on their own for retirement, then, maybe it's a 529 plan, some more educational focused savings. Maybe they want to be able to have their kids, start a business or put a down payment on a house. Maybe you give some funds that are less restricted, maybe just in a normal taxable account, UTMA or UGMA account where they're still children. But some parents maybe find the idea attractive that, hey, we can put some money towards my kids' retirement so they don't have to worry about making those savings for themselves, or it can supplement whatever they save themselves. Maybe they're worried about Social Security staying solvent through all those years, et cetera. It's just a really different way to reframe, I think, the conversation of intergenerational giving with kids.
Yeah, and as far as I understand, though, with the Trump accounts, the child will get control over the funds at 18. So whereas the parents might be designing these contributions to stay in the account and the eventual IRA for until retirement, the kid could just choose to liquidate it, right? So this might be an item of care as well if the parents want to have a little more control over the funds, I would think.
Well, that's absolutely true. Child will have full control over this account. And you think of, $5,000 annual contribution starting from when someone is a baby up until their age 18 year, they might have a couple $100,000 in this account by the time they turn 18. So, some really, really important to have conversations, I think, and clear communication between the parent and the child about, hey, what is this for? What are your plans for doing this? I think it's a big bet on the child actually keeping the funds in this account, because yes, they can always just decide to eat the tax penalty and take all the money out once they get full ownership of it at 18.
And I will note for our listeners, I will put a link in the episode description to an article that Ben wrote a few months ago, digging really deep into the Trump accounts, how they work, as well as looking at some of the potential tax strategies involved with them, as well as a discussion of other savings opportunities. So take a look at that if you're interested. All right. So far we have a better idea of what a Trump accounts are, what kinds of clients might be interested in them, sort of the considerations when opening one. So, let's say an advisor has talked about them with the client and the client says, all right, this is going to meet my goals. This is what I want to do. So the next step, of course, then is to actually open one of these accounts. And so this is a very new type of account. IRAs have been around for a while. Many advisors have opened up thousands of those. But I understand that the process to open the Trump accounts is a little bit different, and that Ben has actually been our guinea pig in opening up one of these. So perhaps you could start by talking about the steps that you took and guideposts for advisors to help clients guide them in opening the accounts.
Yeah. So you think about how you go and open a standard IRA or a brokerage account. You go to your custodian of choice and fill out an application or have an account opening form that the client fills out. They put in their information and click a button and submit it, and the account is open. They can start to invest it, etc. So these TAs are really nothing like that at all. It is a completely unique process that was really dictated by the law that passed these accounts by OBA. This is just how the legislation was written, so this is how they are opened. So how this works essentially is, I say it's in three big steps. The first one is that the law requires parents to officially elect to open this account by filing a tax form, Form 4547. So this is the first step, is actually filling out this form. And there are a few different ways that people can do this. One is just the way you would fill out any other tax form. You fill it out and file it along with your income tax return. Either you can use tax filing software if that's how you use it. If you DOI it, or if you use a tax preparer, they can file it along with your return. So it could just be filed like a normal tax form. The other ways to do it are, there is an official Trump Accounts app that's, if you go to the Trump Accounts website, which is trumpaccounts.gov, that kind of pushes you and nudges people towards downloading this app where you can fill out this an electronic version of this Form 4547 just within the phone app itself, if you feel like downloading that to your Android or iPhone. But the third way to do it, which is the way that I ended up doing it for my own children, was if you have an IRS website login, you can go to the IRS website and fill in an electronic version of this form there. You need to have an IRS login, which requires going through their login vendor, ID me. They have some pretty stringent verification processes. You have to take a picture of a photo ID and upload a selfie to verify identity, et cetera. So it makes sense if you already have this IRS account to go in and fill the form out online on the IRS website. I already had this account, so it made sense for me. For someone who's a client, maybe who doesn't have an IRS account already, might not be the hassle of creating the accounts and going through all the verification, might not be quite worth it just for filling out this one form. And so it's really a choice of do you file it with your tax return? Do you download the app, decide you're comfortable with that, and fill out the form there? Or do you have an IRS login that you can go onto the website? So anyway, either way that you do this, you have to fill out this form first. And so when I did this, I filled out the form online through the IRS. It took about 3 days after that before I could go on to the next step, which was actually activating and opening the account itself. About 3 days after I filled out this form, I got an email from official Trump account people and had a link to set up the actual account itself. And so that part of it was actually fairly straightforward. It took me to a website. This is one of the strange things about it. Instead of trumpaccounts.gov, which is the site that you download the app and fill out the Form 4547 for, this is a different website. It is trumpaccount.gov. .com. So singular, not plural, and .com, not .gov. A little confusing, but that is the site for actually opening the accounts themselves after filing at this 4547. So that is a pretty straightforward process. It's actually, this was put together by Robinhood, who is sort of the designated financial agent for administering these accounts by the government. And so Robinhood stood up this trumpaccount.com site. It works pretty well. It's a pretty straightforward and intuitive account opening and verification process. You wouldn't even really know it was Robinhood unless you actually look into the client agreement and the disclosures, et cetera, that says it is opened by Robinhood LLC. I know some people have some misgivings about what Robinhood being involved means for all this thing, but really the website itself and everything is a pretty smooth process.
So it sounds like we already have a couple steps so far. So first off is, as you said, is filing the form 4547, few different ways to do that. Then this isn't just opening it instantly. It sounds like it takes a few days to actually get sort of this activation link to activate the account. So I'm thinking from an advisor's perspective here, it's not only helping a client figure out the best way that they want to file this form, but also perhaps a little nudge as a reminder that the activation link is coming in to actually take that next step, because just because the form has been filed, the account hasn't been open yet.
Yeah, I think for a lot of advisors, it's sort of the dreaded follow-up item, because this is not a thing you'll necessarily be able to do the entire process, maybe just sitting in your office with the client or in an online meeting. You might be a couple days of wait time that you have to go and nudge them to go on to the next step of the process, because it doesn't all happen at once.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say you've gone through, you've filed the form, you've activated the account. So I'm assuming the next step is to actually contribute or fund the account. How did that process work?
Yeah, exactly. So I actually opened the account prior to July 4th, which was the first day that you can actually contribute to the account. So on July 4th, I got another email that said, okay, these accounts are live. You can now contribute to them. So I went back to the trumpaccount.com website and went through the funding process. And this, again, was fairly straightforward. You can either link a debit card or a bank account. They use Plaid to link your bank account and be able to make a transfer that way. They provide a QR code and a link if you want to send it to maybe a grandparent or someone else who might want to contribute. Anyone can make this contribution essentially. And so they really try to make it as simple as possible. One thing I will say that I haven't said yet already, but one of the other unique things about these accounts is that unlike, say, a standard IRA, you can open these accounts anywhere. You can have as many IRAs open at one time as you want to. You can fund them in any way that you want to. You can put some in one account and some in the other account as long as you don't exceed the annual contribution limits. These TAs do not work like that. Every single TA that is newly opened, needs to be done through this process of filing Form 4547, opening this account in this Robinhood site, because they are really the sole designated agent for opening new Trump accounts. 100% of new Trump accounts will be opened at Robinhood. That's a really key thing, I think, for a lot of advisors, is like, where can we open these? It's only at one place for new Trump accounts. There will be other institutions that will offer their own TAs for rollover purposes. So all the new ones will be opened at Robinhood. Then they can be rolled over. And I know that Fidelity plans to do these. Schwab plans to do these. I'm sure Vanguard plans to do these. I'm sure many other custodians will be offering their own rollover accounts, but they can't be actually newly opened and contributed to at these places. They have to be initially opened at Robinhood and then rolled over. The other key thing here is that only one TA can be open on behalf of any child at any given time. So you can't have multiple different TAs out there. If you roll over, transfer one from one custodian to the other, from Robinhood to Schwab or Fidelity, you have to transfer the entire account. You can't just do a partial rollover or, just open a new account somewhere to start new contributions. It's a very strict process of they're all opened in one place. And if you move one, you got to move the whole thing. So really unique in terms of these the many different types of retirement accounts that we see, that this has this very regimented opening process here.
All right, thanks for the rundown on contributing to these accounts. So it sounds like you're making electronic contributions. Again, I think you mentioned either a debit card or linking a bank account to it electronically. Though I understand that one of the other pieces to keep in mind for the Trump account is in terms of the cumulative nature of the contribution limit. So if you are, let's say as a parent, are contributing to a Trump account and you might have a grandparent who's also contributing or others, that the total amount of contributions in 1 year to the account is on an account basis and not a per contributor basis. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It is on a per account basis. And I do foresee that there's a lot of potential here for people to accidentally over contribute to these accounts, partially because yes, anyone can contribute to these accounts, but there's certainly a per account or per beneficiary limit here. The other angle to this is that there are employer contributions that are available, but the employer contributions actually count towards the individual contribution limit. So you can contribute up to $5,000, and employers can contribute up to $2,500 per year, but that $2,500 is a part of the $5,000 overall limit. So if an employer contributes $2,500 and then, a parent or a grandparent contributes $5,000 of their own, all of a sudden you've got a $2,500 over contribution because you had both the employer contribution and the individual contribution, both of which are subject to that $5,000 overall limit. And so the interesting thing is what Robinhood is actually doing here per their customer agreement is that if there are any over contributions to this account, they are going to open a separate retail UTMA custodial account that will essentially be the overflow that will take these additional contributions. So I think for people who have misgivings about UTMAs for various reasons, about who has control of the account, what the funds can be used for, et cetera, it's very important to keep track of those contributions, especially if you've got employer contributions or contributions from other relatives coming in, to make sure there's not an overcontribution, because then you will have an automatic custodial taxable account all of a sudden be opened on this child's behalf, which is not what everyone wants, I don't think.
Okay, terrific. Yeah, that's, I think, really helpful to know for folks. And another good advisor, sort of a way for advisors to support their clients in the sense of helping them not only make sure they're following through with these different steps to open the account, but understanding these contribution limits. So as you said, they don't end up with an unintentional custodial account that they might not have expected. So, okay, so now we've gotten to the point, we've filed the Form 4547, we've activated the account, we've made our contribution to the account. So I would say, is it now time to invest the funds? Perhaps you could run down how that process actually works.
Yes. So, yes, that is once you've kind of got the funds moved in, and I'll say if you got funds moving in via ACH transfer, that takes 4 or 5 days. So that is an additional waiting period beyond just electing the account and opening the account. And now all of a sudden you've got another wait to move money over. The plus side is that they do automatically invest these contributions once they come in. They don't just sit in cash. It's actually part of the investment requirements for these accounts is that they cannot just sit in cash. There's a requirement for these accounts to be invested in U.S. equity index funds. This is really the specific requirement here that is for all of these TAs, is that they must be invested in U.S. equity index funds with a less than 0.1% annual expense ratio. So basically low fee index funds, these must be invested in. And so the automatic investment option that they have chosen for this is a State Street S&P 500 ETF. I think the ticker is SPYM. That is kind of the default investment option for money contributed into this account. They do have a number of other options. They're all actually pretty similar. There's another S&P 500 ETF from iShares. There's some more, broader market kind of completion portfolios. There's an S&P 1500 ETF. There's a Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF. There's another iShares Total Stock Market ETF. And so you're not necessarily, I think, going to be mixing and matching these investments at all, because they're really very similar. It's just a question of, do you want just a large cap US S&P 500 fund, or do you want something with a little more exposure to mid and small cap, in which case you do the S&P 1500 or one of the total stock market ETFs. There's not a large cap and a small cap option or a value and a growth option. It's really just limited right now to these options. Maybe some other custodians start to open accounts and are a little more varied in their investment options. But right now it's, do you want large cap or do you want some mix of large and broader markets altogether?
Yeah, and I should note for our listeners out there, Ben has written an article for the Nerd's Eye View blog that is now out that shows all of the different options, whether it's investments. It includes screenshots of the various stages of opening Trump accounts. So if you're interested in taking a look at those, you can go to kitces.com/FAT1, FAT the number 1, and that will take you to this article to learn more. All right, so Ben, thank you so much for walking us through that process in terms of opening and funding and investing the Trump account. And I think, it really does show there's a lot of room for advisor support here in terms of making sure that clients complete each step. As you said, for a few of these, there might be a few days before they can complete the next step. So I think a potential role there for advisors in helping them follow through. To leave our listeners, Ben, perhaps you could give just, one takeaway that our advisor listeners might want to get from this discussion of opening Trump accounts.
Sure, Adam. I think it's really this, that all of the different steps in the process I mentioned today, they're all pretty simple individually. I think the website where you open the TAs, the Form 45, 47, the actual investment process, those all went very smoothly individually as I did them. I think it's when you put together this entire process, as you've sort of mentioned, that it starts to get complicated and messy for clients because there are steps, there are sort of lag times, there are waiting periods where you're going to have to wait a few days for an email or something confirming that you can actually start and move ahead with the next step. And, clients have busy lives. They lose track of these things. They miss emails. We all do. I shouldn't say it's just clients. Everyone does that. And so one of the big things I think that advisors can do for their clients as they are going through this process is first of all, just giving them some idea of what this process looks like from an overall level. That's kind of why I wrote this article, is just, I think for advisors, it's really valuable to just be able to help their clients see what this is all going to look like and predict what the steps are going to look like going forward. And then as they're actually going through this process, being able to have those little nudges, those little reminders to make sure that they're continuing to go through it and following through with all these little different items.
Well, terrific, Ben. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Financial Advisor Technician Podcast.
Absolutely, Adam. Thank you so much for having me.
And for our listeners, if you'd like to dig deeper into opening Trump accounts, you can go to kitces.com/FAT1 to read Ben's full-length article on this topic. And as a reminder, Kitces Premier members can earn CE credit for taking quizzes on our technical content and also have access to our regular CE-eligible webinars, including Ben's recent popular webinar that goes even deeper into the financial planning implications of Trump accounts. Recordings of these webinars can be found in the members section. And if you're interested in becoming a Premier member, we'll put a link to do so in the episode description. Also, if you enjoyed today's discussion, please follow or subscribe to Financial Advisor Technician in your favorite podcast player so you never miss an episode. And please share the podcast with colleagues and others who might be interested in nerding out on technical planning topics. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week on the Financial Advisor Technician podcast.